behind, but it's a rainy Monday. What are you gonna do? And I literally just said to Brandy, I'm ready when you are, and then realized I wasn't ready, but she'd already hit record, so I guess I'm ready.
Ready.
So we had something else actually lined up for today. This week, and we're gonna get to it. This week we're gonna talk about transplanting, repotting. We're gonna show you how to repot. We're gonna get our hands dirty and whatnot. But if anybody's seen the forecast with thunderstorms and hail and ridiculous amount of rain in a short period of time, I thought it would be good to talk about the weather and what that means for the garden, because a lot of times the weather very much affects us. Even last year, and this one throws people off, where we got the heat dome, and the amount of sun we got, it was amazing. I'm talking purely selfishly. Obviously, we get into climate change and what happened in BC, the effect it had on farmers, devastating. But personally, for me and my garden, it was amazing, and that's what I'm talking about when I say that. Obviously, I'm not talking about big picture. We're not going to get into that. We'll talk about that when we do our podcast later. Look forward to our podcast. We're going to call it Kangaroos. Well, no, I'm just kidding. But we are talking about a podcast.
Yeah.
We're not this yet. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. But the sunlight, we were getting messages from people going, help, my plants are not responding to this sun, it's too hot. What can I do? And we had to address that. We even had Global contact us and say, hey, can you give us some tips on the heat? A lot of people are having trouble with their gardens. So I thought we would talk about weather. I thought we would talk about the big ones. Sun, rain, hail, wind. I didn't know how to draw wind, so I wrote wind, and then I figured out I could do that, so I did draw it as well. That's why that one's labeled. And then snow and frost. So we're going to do some pros and cons on all of them, because remarkably they do all have a pro and a con. And it's, some of them are pretty obvious. Like the pro might be obvious, the con might not be obvious, or vice versa. The con but not the pro. So if we start and we do rain, well, water, okay? We've already established in the show every plant needs water. Some plants need more, some need less. Some need more at certain times when they're fruiting or they're setting their flowers. There's xeriscaping, where you've got drought-tolerant plants, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, every plant needs water in some way or another. And that's especially true of our gardens with our perennials and our trees. They're designed for this climate. So while some of them will be drought tolerant, they do also like water, and some of them will need a lot of water. And obviously, the downside is flooding. And I don't just mean flooding. When we think of flooding, I think a lot of us go back to 2013, the last major flood Calgary had. And I'm not talking about that because, again, if you're affected by a flood like that, the last thing you're thinking of is your garden. You've got 3 feet of water in your basement, your car's floating down the street. You're not really that cared about how your lilies are doing. I'm talking about where we don't think about it. We've got everything outdoors and we go, oh nice, it's raining, I don't have to water. But meanwhile our pots are in standing water in full saturation. Or we get standing water in the garden and then we get a ton of mosquitoes. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about very, very localized flooding. Pots, hanging baskets, low areas of the garden, seedlings can get washed out. So, rain is great, but we have to keep an eye on it. Another great tip for rain as well, this is off to the side, great time to set up your rain barrel. It's going to fill pretty quick. So if you have a rain barrel, if not, we've got them, and I'm not doing that to sell it. We're actually doing it with the non-profit organization Green Calgary for environmental purposes. So come in and get that. Another one that we have is snow. It insulates. So a lot of times people ask why Edmonton or Grand Prairie have better growing conditions than us. And when you look at places like the East Coast, Montreal, the Maritimes, why things grow so well there, and a lot of it has to do with the snow. Because in the winter, we know it gets cold, and it gets cold on the East Coast as well. I used to live there, and it gets bitterly cold. But what tends to happen is, as winter starts and the air temperature is changing, the snow comes. You get a lot of snow. You get 2, 3, 4 feet of it. But they don't get a Chinook, so it doesn't melt. And when you're under the snow, it can only get so cold. Then it gets brutally cold, and you get the -30s and the -40s with the wind. Well, those plants, they're insulated. They're not going to feel that cold. So here, our biggest problem is we get the snow, then we get a Chinook, it melts all the snow, we don't get any more snow, and it gets down to -40. So that's where it's so hard to grow here. So snow is massively beneficial, but the downside of snow is the weight. So you can get a lot of damage. We get heavy snow. I think everybody again remembers Snowmageddon. Was that 2012? 2013, 2014?
Was that like the
snow in September,
oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that was about that time.
Yeah. So what we're talking, oh my God, 6, 7, 8 years ago. 7, 8 years ago, that huge snowfall we got in September when the trees still had leaves. The damage was ridiculous. And I see every year people's shrubs are crushed, snow comes off the roof, that kind of thing. So the weight of the snow can cause a lot of damage. So again, there's the pro and the con. Now we've got, I want a different color because I like using different colors, wind. Okay? A great one is pollination and cleaning. So pollination, pretty self-explanatory. If you've been outside in the last week, you'll know all about the pollen. It is dense this year. And the wind is blowing it around and everything's getting pollinated and all the plants are having a great time. Yay, that's good. We enjoy that. But the cleaning aspect, a lot of people don't think about, is that it blows dust off your plants so they can photosynthesize better. It keeps a better airflow, so it's harder for fungal diseases to get in. We talked about disease at the webinar on Saturday. And a good airflow makes it very, very hard for powdery mildew and rusts and whatnot to establish because the spores are being blown around. So airflow is essential. However, with wind, the other one we have, like snow, it's not weight. Oops, I used the wrong color. Get out of here, bad color. It's damage. And I think we've all seen wind damage, especially in Calgary. I'll go a couple hours south to Lethbridge. And the wind, it'll bring down trees, it'll rip branches off, it'll blow plants over. You ever have a tomato? The tomatoes that aren't in the cage when the wind comes can very easily snap and break. I've seen my sunflowers, come down because of wind. So wind is amazing. It keeps everything moving, it keeps things circulating. But those very powerful winds can bring a lot of damage to the garden. Have you ever had one of those windstorms? You go out and look at the garden and there's branches down and they've landed on your annuals or your perennials. Your tomatoes are snapped and you've got to do a big cleanup. So that's where we're at with wind. Now, one that I got to be honest, it's a bit of a stretch here. The dreaded F word for gardeners, frost. Yeah, and I think it's very easy for every gardener in the spring or in the fall to think of frost and think it's purely damaging.
Yeah.
And it is. So you know what? We're going to start on this side. Damage. And what happens with frost is that it lands on the plant and it freezes the cells. And as we know, plants have water in the cells, in the cell wall. Well, when water gets cold and starts to freeze, it expands. So the water in the cell expands and it ruptures the cell wall. Then the plant can no longer hold its rigidity or anything, and that's why you see them drooping, that's why you see the leaves turning black. And it kills them instantly. Certain plants, I'm not going to say all plants because that's my next point, but your tomatoes, your peppers, impatiens, New Guinea impatiens, forget about it. However, the benefit of frost is the aesthetic. And that's why we've got pansies, chrysanthemums. You ever put a chrysanthemum out in the autumn for fall decoration, Halloween decoration? They get nipped by the frost and the leaves go two-tone and the flowers look darker. That's damage. That's structural damage, but it's able to handle it better. It's not going to kill it outright. The pansies seem to look more vibrant when they have that coating of frost on them. So the frost, and I like frost in the spring because I know it's going to go away. I don't like frost in the fall because it means that snow is coming. But when your lawn has got those white tips, almost like early 90s hair's got the frosted tips going on, and you walk on it and it kind of goes scrunch under your feet and you leave your footprints behind. It's rad. It's so pretty. So frost brings an aesthetic to the garden that we otherwise wouldn't see. But by a country mile, we don't go, oh, it's frost, yay, my garden looks pretty. We go, son of a gun, it just killed half my plants. And then the last major one, and I'm not going to include hail on this list because hail doesn't bring anything good. It's damaging, and I'm trying to do pros and cons. It comes down, and a lot of times it hits the ground and it's being warmed up by the sun immediately. It's not even wetting the ground. We had a big hailstorm last year. 20 minutes after the hail, the ground was dry. The pavement, the grass, everything. It hadn't even soaked in. It didn't even get that chance. And hail will just destroy the garden. So it's not even making the list because this is a list of weather that there is good and bad. And frost almost didn't make the list. But then I was like, oh, you know what? There is an aesthetic beauty to those frosty mornings. So that's why I wanted to include it. And then, of course, sun. I think we've all touched on it enough to know photosynthesis. And it would be remiss to not include warmth. So photosynthesis, as we know, requires light. It produces the energy. It's the food of the plant. It's what every plant needs in some degree. Without it, we're not going to have growth. And then the warmth. Plants need that warmth for their roots to grow. That's why things like black planters, veggie pod, do so amazing because that black traps the heat and the roots are able to grow. It allows the soil to dry out quicker, so you've got a great aspect going on. The ratio between the moisture, the drainage, the warmth, and the soil drying out is perfect. So the photosynthesis and the warmth is incredible. But on the flip side, we have heat. And that heat exhaustion can be real. And it is prolonged and ongoing. So when there's no break, there's no clouds, and it's 7, 8, 9 more days of just full sun and plus 35-degree temperatures, the plants are exhausted. The photosynthesis is happening. It's not stopping. That is a cellular reaction. If we feel full, we can stop eating. We have that ability. A plant cannot stop photosynthesizing. The only way to stop it is to eliminate one of the factors that's going to kill the plant. So you're like, oh, I don't want it to photosynthesize. No water. Well, in high heat, the plant's like, see ya, I'm out. No light, the plant's like, well, I can't do it. I'm going to die. And then gas exchange, well, what are we going to do? Put it in a vacuum? So we don't really have that ability to stop the photosynthesis. And that's why last year I was watering my tomatoes 3 times a day, literally to keep them alive and keep them going. And then finally the heat broke, we got some rain and everything did amazing because it had so much stored up sugars and ready to go. But heat exhaustion is very real in plants. A lot of times there are certain plants when it's hot, they won't go. I blew through the 15-minute time lot. But I wanted to touch on all of this because a lot of times we think of certain weather patterns and we don't think of the pros and the cons. We go, oh, it's raining, oh, I won't have to water. But we don't go, oh no, my pots will flood. And I want people to be aware of that. We go, oh, it's going to be sunny, oh, the plants will love that. Meanwhile, the pots have dried out in an hour, the plants are exhausted, they don't know what to do, and we haven't thought to change our watering habits because we're like, well, I water my pot once a day. It watered all last week, surely it doesn't need any more water. Yeah, it probably does, we have to check. So whenever you're seeing a weather pattern, and especially when it starts going to the extreme, no, a morning of rain and then an afternoon of 22 degrees sun, it's probably ideal. Not probably, it is ideal for the plants. Cool overnight, rainy overnight, and then a full day of 25 degrees sun, yeah, your garden is going to just be in its element. It's literally the best. Some cool winds to help dry it off, blah, 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 you're away to the races. But when we have any of those prolonged and to the extreme, it becomes detrimental. So let's keep an eye out on the weather this week. Keep an eye out on our plants. They might need a little bit of support here and there. They might even need to be brought out of the rain inside, in a garage, something like that, just to give them a fighting chance to get through the storm, and everything will be tickety-boo. However, it's going to be overcast. It's going to be moist. It's going to be cool. Perfect for transplanting. So we're going to jump right into that tomorrow. So stay dry, stay warm. If you do have to go out, I have to take the dog out tonight. Raincoats, bundle up. We don't want anybody sneezing and being chilly. Perfect day for coffee, tea, and sitting on the couch. So be safe, everybody. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye now.